So tantrums are the hallmark of becoming independent for this reason, for a number of reasons. So starting around 2, because you usually don't see a lot of tantrums before 2, although sometimes in that 18-month to 2 period. But children start to get this sense of self. It brings up all kinds of new emotions. They want to do things that they maybe don't have the skills to do, or they're being limited because it's not safe or it's not available. And so there's a mixture of, I want to do these things, maybe I can't communicate what I want or need right now, and they get overwhelmed by their own emotions. And part of the reason is a lot of those emotions are new. So anger, frustration, fear are emotions that really become very intense during this period, as do elation and joy, right? So when a young child is up, they're up, and when they're down, they're down. But the other piece of it, and this is where there's a lot of new and really interesting research, is that the part of the brain that's responsible for helping a person handle those emotions is not formed. I mean, it's just barely started in life. And that's a part of the brain that's going to be developing until they're in their early 20s. So if you go backwards from that and you say, oh, I have a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old, they really don't have the capacity to handle these very intense emotions. And so what's the tantrum? It's that point that the child is so overwhelmed by the emotions that they just fall apart. The biggest question that parents of toddlers and young children have is, help, my toddler's tantruming. What do I do about it? So there's a couple ways to think about it. I mean, the first is, you know your child, or you know enough about them to figure out, like, what are these moments that tend to be the meltdown moments. Often it's, oh, they've skipped a meal, or our day was different. You know, maybe we had relatives visiting and we were out running around. Hunger and lack of sleep can easily lead to tantrums. You know, we know this as adults, our resources are down, we just don't do as well. So young children are the same way. So that's the first thing, is can you kind of figure out what led to it and maybe try to avoid that next time. The second piece is, sometimes you can predict when these tantrums are going to come, right? New places set some children off, crowds, a change in schedule, and to sort of prepare yourself for it and try to prepare the child. The other piece is that parents tend to learn, if this continues, we're going to have a tantrum. So sometimes you can distract a child as you see them getting upset. You say, oh, honey, you didn't want to do this right now. Let's find something else to do. But let's say none of that works and you're at that point of tantrum. I think the most important thing to remember is that children are overwhelmed at this point. They really can't sort of hear the parent or hear us trying to be rational. They've fallen apart. And what they really need is to be safe physically at that point and to know that someone's there for them. So is it parents often say, should I ignore it? And it's sort of a yes-no answer. Be there for them. Let them have the tantrum. It's not the end of the world, right? Let them have the tantrum. And when they come out of it, the most important thing is that a parent's able to say to them, boy, you were really upset, really, really upset. I still love you. You know, maybe you have a hug. Some children need a little space before they want to reunite, and then you move on. And what it literally teaches the brain is, I get overwhelmed, I get so angry, I recover from it, and we're still together, me and mommy or me and daddy, and we can move on. And that over time is where it helps the brain be able to handle these emotions better before this sort of breaking point. So here's what happens for the toddler, right? Emotions are a very automatic part of the brain. They come from, what we consider sort of a lower form of the brain, like the fear center, for example. You don't have to be taught to be fearful, right? This is something that's very primitive that we need for survival. So the emotion center of the brain is a very automatic, sort of lower part of the brain. The sort of upper part of the brain, or the frontal cortex, and in the prefrontal cortex is where the center is for regulating emotions, right? This is the part of the brain that says, oh, I'm upset, I need to calm myself down, or I'm not feeling so comfortable right now, let me move. So it takes the emotion and it gives us something to do with it. Young children have very little of those capabilities, because that's the part of the brain that takes so long to develop over time. And you know this because you watch young children, 2 or a 5-year-old in a new situation. You can actually see them sort of start to maybe crumble or be upset. rather than being able to say to themselves, hey, this doesn't feel so comfortable to me. They can't label their emotions yet. They're getting better at it. And they don't have the ability to reason through, or they don't have those steps of let me think this through yet, because that part of the brain is just not there. So what happens is the parent literally becomes their outside regulator. It's the parent who says to them, oh, you're feeling angry right now. That really made you mad. That's frustrating. And the more a parent says this in the moment, the more the child starts to learn, oh, that's what this is. And you're literally building those centers in the upper part of the brain. So when a child has a tantrum, what's happening is the emotion centers of the brain are intensely sort of firing, right? Anger or sadness or fear, whatever it is. And the part of the brain that's supposed to say, hey, I'm upset right now, let me take a deep breath and calm down, isn't at the capacity to be able to do that yet. So that part of the brain is sort of gone. The emotions flood the child, literally, and all else is lost. You know, I say to parents, they can't be rationalized through this. They don't have the verbal abilities at that point to talk. It's as if those emotions have just flooded the brain. So parents actually help children when they help them through the tantrum, because every time a child has a tantrum, they're certainly expressing their emotions, that's for sure. And as the parents help them come out of it and comfort them at the end, they're reestablishing with the child that they're okay and that the world is back together.